Thank you. I'm Walter Lichtensteiger from the University of Zurich, and I'm actually also working in the OECD. I would like to come back to the presentation of our Levene. When we are looking for arguments why we could act now, and we have some problems with the many reproductive endpoints because of the long latency between exposure and effect. In the brain, it's different. In the brain, we can look at the children 1 year and a few years afterwards, and indeed we see effects. There are now a number of very well-controlled epidemiological studies in humans which have shown direct relationships between exposure to identified endocrine disruptors and behavioral disturbances. We should perhaps leave a little bit the idea that endocrine disruptors act on sexual behavior. What we see in the children are changes in cognitive behavior and changes in social behavior and in the emotional behavior. And that may be perhaps surprising, but it's actually quite clear from neurobiology. And it's not only...
I hope that came over in my talk.
It's not only the thyroid actually, but also the hippocampus and cortex and also dopamine systems are targets of estrogens and androgens also. So my point is that the brain function is of course one of the most important functions I think for our human society. And we have very good correlations now established for correlations between exposure to a number of endocrine disruptors and disturbances in brain function. What one could also say is that the disturbances that have been observed in experimental animals actually reflect what we see in humans. So we have very good correlations, and I think we should use these arguments from brain function in our discussions on endocrine disruptors more often. It gets a little bit lost. I should say that also over the years, I also had some problems even in the OECD to get the brain function acknowledged. But that would be a good argument for the relevance of endocrine disruptors.
Yeah, thank you very much for these comments. Yeah, in 10 minutes I couldn't go over everything, so I focused on thyroid hormone disruption because it apparently, many authors would agree that it's the primary target of many categories of chemicals. But indeed, just about everything, thyroid hormone is a modulator. It modulates estrogen responses. You're absolutely right. And it can be taken as an indication of many other forms of endocrine disruption. But I couldn't agree with you more that it's time to act. And personally, as a grandmother, I get very disquiet. My nights are not calm.
I think it was the gentleman in the red, white shirt there.
Tony Trudale, I try to consult with NGOs. So EFSA is reassessing what reliable evidence is. That's nice. Under the pesticide regulation, you've got a little more flexibility on what evidence you can consider. And it's very nice to hear that OECD is coming up with some thyroid methods, and I understand tiered testing strategies are needed to gradually build up towards realistic testing of chronic effects, which is going to take a lot of effort. But in REACH and other laws, you have a legal requirement to use the test guideline methods. We're going to need a lot of work on the OECD test methods, and just keep it short. I'll pass it off anyway.
I think there is the OECD is actually thinking at the moment of trying to bring in a way of assessing data that has been published in scientific literature as well as the test guidance methods. They're not there yet, and I can bear witness to what you're saying. It took 10 years to get one test validated. It's a very long procedure. And yeah, I'll just make this point because I didn't have the time, if I can. Europe wants innovation. We're not doing things the right way to get that innovation if we're destroying our cognitive capacities to this extent.
Okay, I'm sorry, you have to wait. But you save your questions and I take it at the end of the session. Sorry? Okay, probably a very good one.
I try my best, thank you. My name is Volker Hosman, I'm an independent toxicology consultant. And my question goes to Ms. Dimanedia. She talked about, and I'm sure it's right, that the thyroid signaling system is highly conserved among the various kingdoms and whatnot, but what is not conserved, and that's a bit of a problem. We're doing most of our toxicology testing in rats, obviously, two-generation testing, and you said that and probably close to 50% of the pesticides that you look at, they respond with the thyroid. Well, 101, and it's also my personal observation, it's around that. 50% have the thyroid as a target organ, but then it's in the rat, and then you frequently see that it's probably secondary to liver induction. The effects are not dismissed as being non-relevant, but if you look at these data, and then in many cases you would see it's probably a rat-specific effect, not really important for humans.
I got the point. You're right. You look at a lot of these pesticides data dossiers, and you're going to see effects seen in rat, and it often ends up with, you got it. It's a bit sort of technical: liver, metabolism, increased clearance, stimulation of the thyroid cancer. Not relevant. We can discuss that till the cows come home. But what we didn't know when we were doing those testing 15 years ago, for most of these pesticides, 30 years ago, about these vulnerable windows of development. We didn't know about the possibility of small variations in availability changing neuronal populations. We didn't know about deiodinases, we didn't know about transporters. We have come a long way. And a lot of that, not relevant to humans because it was seen in rats, is unfortunately erroneous.
Okay, we have one more question from Hans. Yeah.
I have a question to Mr. Danaka. The work of EFSA on endocrines concludes in the end that endocrine disrupting chemicals can be treated like any other chemical and can be treated by traditional risk assessment. And this is a remarkable difference to what I hear from scientists, at least all the thousands of scientists, active endocrinologists, gathered in endocrine society. So my question is, how can you explain this strange difference?
This is clearly the position, as you have enunciated it, that is stated in the scientific committee opinion of EFSA, that like other chemicals, indeed, the classical risk characterization is a reliable way forward. And this being the case, that doesn't mean that, of course, if there are hazard characterization or hazard-based principles that are applied and are implemented in the law, that we will not follow them. But indeed, that's what was stated, and you can dispute this fact that the cows won't even get home before we're finished with this discussion. But indeed, that's the opinion, and that's what our scientific committee strongly believes in.